The Galactic Council chamber fell silent as the massive view screen flickered to life. Ambassador Zethkar's four eyes widened in disbelief as thousands of ships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. The fleet stretched across, the darkness like a constellation of vengeful stars, each vessel bristling with weapons that shouldn't exist. "Impossible," whispered the Velkarian representative, her crystalline form trembling. "The humans were exiled to the void reaches barely 50 years ago. They should all be dead." But there they were, not just alive but thriving, and they weren't alone. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, her weathered hands clasped behind her back as she surveyed the Armada she now commanded. 50 years ago, she had been a lieutenant when the Council had delivered their ultimatum. Humanity was too dangerous, too unpredictable, too willing to fight when others would negotiate. They were to be relocated to the galactic rim, to the dead systems beyond civilized space, where they could harm no one but themselves. The Council had expected them to die quietly in the cold and dark. They had been wrong. "Admiral," came the voice of Captain Mordak, a Catherian whose people had been the first to welcome the exiled humans. His reptilian features bore the scars of 100 battles fought side by side with human forces. "All fleet commanders report ready. The outer perimeter has been established." Chen nodded, remembering the early days after exile. The first winter, on Kepler 442b, had claimed nearly 10,000 lives. The second winter, they had been ready. By the third year, they weren't just surviving, they were exploring. The fourth year brought first contact with the Catherian refugees, fellow exiles who had been cast out for refusing to surrender their military traditions to the Council's peace edicts. "Open a channel to the Council," Chen commanded. The response came quickly, transmitted on emergency frequencies that hadn't been used in decades. Ambassador Zethkar's familiar face appeared on screen, his tentacles writhing with barely contained anxiety. "Admiral Chen," he began, his translator struggling with the rapid clicks and whistles of his native tongue. "The Council is surprised by humanity's survival. We had assumed that we would die quietly." Chen interrupted, her voice carrying the weight of 5 decades in the void. "You underestimated us, Ambassador. You always did." Behind her, the bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency: humans, Catherians, the insectoid HFY, even a few of the energy-based luminari who had joined their cause after the Council had attempted to regulate their reproduction rates. All of them united by a single truth: the galaxy's self-appointed. Peacekeepers had forgotten what real peace looked like. The Council maintained order for 3,000 years before humanity achieved spaceflight, Zethkar protested. "Your species brought nothing but chaos and conflict wherever they traveled." Chen's smile was sharp as a blade. "We brought something else too, Ambassador. Something your Council had forgotten existed." She gestured to the tactical display showing the massive fleet formations. "We brought hope." In the 50 years since exile, humanity had done more than merely survive. They had thrived, grown, and built something the galaxy hadn't seen in millennia: a true alliance of equals. Not subjects bowing to Council authority, but partners united by choice rather than fear. The Catherians had taught them advanced metallurgy and shield technology. The HFY had shared their expertise in biotechnology and terraforming. The Luminari had revolutionized their energy weapons and FTL drives. And humanity? They had contributed something far more valuable than any technology. They had taught their new allies how to dream of something better. "Every species in our fleet volunteered to be here," Chen continued, watching satisfaction as the Council chamber erupted in confused chatter behind Zethkar. "Every ship captain chose to stand with us. Can you say the same about your own forces, Ambassador?" The truth hung in the void between them. The Council's authority rested on submission, not loyalty. Their fleets followed orders because they had no choice, not because they believed in the cause. When the fighting began, and it would begin, because the Council would never willingly relinquish control, how many of their ships would stand and fight? How many would simply withdraw, to protect their homeworlds? What do you want? Zethkar asked finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Chen turned to face the viewscreen directly, her gray eyes reflecting the light of distant stars. 50 years ago, you sent us away because you feared what humanity represented. You were right to be afraid. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the council chamber. We represent change. We represent the idea that your subjects don't have to remain subjects forever. The tactical officer, a young Zephi named Click Thera, looked up from her console. Admiral, we're receiving surrender signals from 17 council patrol fleets. They're requesting permission to join the Armada. Chen nodded, unsurprised. Word had spread quickly through the galaxy's communication networks. The exiled humans had returned, and they had brought friends. More importantly, they had brought proof that there was an alternative to council rule. Ambassador Zethkar, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the council chamber. Humanity didn't come back for revenge. We came back to offer something the galaxy hasn't seen in 3,000 years. A choice. She gestured to her mixed-species crew, to the massive fleet spreading across the system, to the dozens of worlds that had already declared their independence from council authority. You can continue trying to maintain order through fear and submission, Chen continued. Or you can join us in building something better, something based on cooperation rather than control, something worthy of the galaxy we all share. The viewscreen showed the council chamber in chaos, representatives arguing in a dozen different languages while Zethkar sat frozen in his seat. Outside, more council ships were breaking formation, their commanders choosing freedom over orders. Admiral Sarah Chen smiled as she watched the old order crumble. Humanity had been cast into the darkness, expected to disappear quietly into the void. Instead, they had found others who shared their dreams and built something magnificent. They had kept their promise after all. They had brought chaos to the galaxy's perfect order. And for the first time in 3 millennia, the galaxy was truly free to choose its own destiny.